This is Dom Bettinelli, the CEO of SQPN, with a brief but very important message. For more than a decade, SQPN has produced the Catholic faith and pop culture podcasts that you love. We're a nonprofit organization, so it's only your generosity that lets us carry out our mission. We haven't run a fundraiser in 2 years, and that's why we need to ask for your help right now. Please make a pledge of whatever amount you can afford to help us continue providing your favorite podcasts, as well as exciting new ones we have planned. To make your pledge and find out about the free thank you gifts we'd like to send you, visit sqpn.com/give. That's sqpn.com/give. Thank you for your generosity. May we hear from you today? You're listening to The Secrets of Doctor Who, episode 105.
One day, I shall come back.
That's it. I've been renewed.
Is when a Time Lord's body wears out, he regenerates.
I'm a Time Lord. I'm not a human being. I walk in eternity.
Bravehearty.
Change, my dear, and it seems not a moment too soon.
Unlimited rice pudding.
Physician, he looks so wearing a bit thin.
Fantastic.
I am Scottish. I can complain about things.
Ta-da! Ooh. Should be fine.
Hi, I'm Dom Bettinelli, and you're listening to The Secrets of Doctor Who, where we discuss everything about the hit BBC series Doctor Who. And today we're discussing, very appropriately, the 11th Doctor Christmas special, A Christmas Carol. Joining me today on the panel are Jimmy Aiken. Hi, Jimmy.
Howdy, Dom.
And Father Corey Stika. Hi, Father Corey.
How's it going? And Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas, everyone. Yes, as this show releases, it is Christmas Eve 2018, and we wish all of you a very Merry Christmas. And hopefully...
And to quote Tiny Tim, God bless us, everyone.
Yeah, exactly. So, and very appropriate for this episode. So we decided to go back, since there isn't going to be a 13th Doctor Christmas special this year. They've moved the special to New Year's Day, and we'll be doing a special episode on that. But
coming up next week.
But so this one we wanted to do a Christmas Carol. But first, Jimmy, do you have a message for the listeners?
Yeah, so we're right down to the end of our giving campaign. We haven't run one in 2 years, but StarQuest really needs to hear from you. This year, we reinvigorated the network. We created a whole bunch of new podcasts, including Let's Talk and Secrets of Star Trek and Jimmy Akin's Mysterious World. And we have others that are coming as well. We stepped out in faith that once people saw the quality of these podcasts, that they would be willing to support them. And so now it's time for us to ask you to do that. Some people have been responding, which is so great. Thank you so much for your generosity. We're not where we need to be, though. We need to hear from more people. So please go to sqpn.com/give, GIVE, and either make a one-time donation or become one of our regular monthly Patreon supporters. We have some lovely thank you gifts we'd like to send you, even themed after your favorite shows. So, you can pick what you'd like. We'd love to send these things to you, but we do need to hear from you if we're going to keep going in producing all these podcasts. We have, with new podcasts, we have new costs associated with editing and hosting and all those kinds of things. So we do need to hear from you, or we will have to cut back. The number is, the place to go is sqpn.com/give. Once again, it's sqpn.com/give. This is the season of giving. We're just about up to Christmas, which of course is the anniversary of God's greatest gift to us, his own son. So please, we'd ask you to reciprocate in a spirit of giving by supporting StarQuest and its effort to draw people closer to God by engaging pop culture. So please go to sqpn.com/give. Since this is a podcast, you could pause right now and do it while you're thinking about it. We'd really appreciate it. And thank you so much for your generosity, and Merry Christmas.
Thank you, Jimmy. So as we mentioned, we're talking about the Christmas Carol. This was the 2010 Doctor Who Christmas special. It aired on Christmas Day. It features Matt Smith, the 11th Doctor, and this was, just to kind of place it in time, was the first episode of the second season. Although it's sort of the previous episode was in June of 2010. The next episode will be in April of 2011. So this kind of falls in this big gap area here.
And I am so excited to talk about this one because this is my favorite of all of the Doctor Who Christmas specials. To my mind, it is far and above superior to the others. And it's also one of my favorite episodes of Doctor Who ever. So I'm really happy to talk about this.
And far superior to that other Matt Smith Christmas special based on The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe.
Oh, yeah. Incidentally, I'd also note it's somewhat ironic that I would like this one so much because I'm not a fan of Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol. I don't like it in part because I think it's insufficiently religious, that it's kind of paved the way for the modern secular true meaning of Christmas special, where the true meaning of Christmas turns out to be something other than Christ.
Right.
Which admittedly you see in this special, I would argue, but
you do. But what I like here, I mean, taking this as a Doctor Who episode, I think it totally works. I using time travel to appropriate the ghost of Christmas past, present, and future, and the psychological journey that Kasdan Sardik goes on in this, and the dialogue and the acting, all of that just totally works. Yeah. So even though I'm not a fan of the source material, I really am a fan of this episode.
And we'll talk about it obviously later, but I do like the twist at the end with the ghost of the future.
Right.
Christmas future. I do.
So,
I know. That's very, very nice.
Totally
twist.
Awesome.
So let's kind of remind folks what this episode was about. So we have Amy and Rory had just been married. This is where we begin, and they're on their honeymoon, and they're trapped on a crashing space liner. And the only way that the 11th Doctor can rescue them is to save the soul of a lonely old miser. But is Kasdan Sardik the richest man in Sardik Town beyond redemption? And what is lurking in the fogs of Christmas Eve? So to my mind, I agree with you, Jimmy. This is the fun kind of repartee and wit that I enjoyed from the Matt Smith era. This is Moffat, I think, at his best. This this
is arguably one of Moffat's best episodes that he wrote. I mean, you could argue that
up there with Blink.
Yes, the dialogue snaps. I mean, this is the some of the best dialogue from the Doctor. So this was the show's 6th Christmas special since its revival, and the first Christmas special starring Matt Smith as the Doctor. It was the first BBC Wales Christmas special, neither written by Russell T Davies nor starring David Tennant. So even the first one was Tennant's coming in as the new Doctor.
His post-regeneration episode was the first Christmas episode.
Yeah.
Now, Kasdan Sardik, the elder Sardik, is played by Sir Michael Gambon, who plays, as people might recognize him as Dumbledore in the Harry Potter movies. The
second Dumbledore.
The second Dumbledore, right. We have a small hint about Amy's pregnancy. We find out that later on in the season, that in the second season, that Amy's pregnant. But when the Doctor scans the crashing ship, he gets the life signs, one more than there are actual people on board, because it counts the baby in Amy's womb.
Ooh,
which is a very interesting pro-life, little bit of, I don't want to get you political, but a little bit of life affirming information there, given that it's Christmas.
And a spoiler about River Song for people who would know later.
Exactly. We have Abigail's song that she sings at the end mentions silence several times, which is a sort of reference forward. And as you mentioned, Jimmy, this is sort of based on Dickens' A Christmas Carol. Moffat said before it aired that this episode would be the most, quote, Christmassy Christmas special ever, and said, it's all your favorite Christmas movies at once in an hour with monsters and the Doctor and honeymoon. And excluding the little fish eaten by a shark, it's the first Christmas special without a character's death. And then another little point, I'm just going to throw these all out there up front so we can talk about the episode altogether. But since Amy was replaced with a ganger in the following season, if you remember that Amy's not really
a duplicate,
right? It's sort of a duplicate that's connected to her mentally. This is presumably the last episode to feature the actual Amy Pond until the end of the episode, The Almost People. So as you go into the second season, that's something to keep in mind. I thought it was interesting that we have another space liner going down as the Christmas special, because the 2007 one was the Voyage of the Damned. Yes.
The Titanic, Space Titanic,
which also featured an actual singer, someone whose profession is a singer, an actress in the movie. That one had Kylie Minogue. This one has gosh, I forgot it off the top of my head, but Catherine Perkins, I think it is, who is a classical singer. That's what she's known as. Catherine Jenkins.
And this was her first acting role. She'd previously appeared in things as a singer, but not as an actress.
And she does a great job. So,
yeah.
So in the open, we have the captain of the starship declare Christmas is canceled.
Yeah.
Which is such a trope. And then Amy and Rory show up on the bridge, and they're a little bit of throwback to Rory's wearing the Roman centurion outfit from the Pandorica opens. Amy is wearing the singing
Police
telegram.
kissogram.
Yeah, the kissogram outfit. And they just keep making references to it's their honeymoon, and it's just all
just
fun.
A bit of fun.
Yes. That was a little uncomfortable. And then for everyone, including them. And then Amy whispers as she's calling the doctor, just this once, don't be late, which of course is a reference to
a callback.
Yeah.
The 11th hour.
Right. Exactly. The 11th hour, when he was late by several decades, or at least one decade. And we have this voiceover, which is Kazran Sardek.
As we see a steampunk future Dickensian environment.
Yes.
Right.
He says, on every world, wherever people are, in the deepest part of the winter, at the exact midpoint, everybody stops and turns and hugs, as if to say, well done. Well done, everyone. We're halfway out of the dark. Back on Earth, we called this Christmas or the winter solstice. On this world, the first settlers called it the Crystal Feast. This is my problem with Doctor Who Christmas specials, is that they actually, as you said before, Jimmy, they strip Christ out of Christmas. They completely remove the whole meaning of Christmas and just turn it into a midwinter holiday.
Yeah. Now they do it though, and I agree, but they actually do it in a less problematic way, to my mind, than American television does. Because you will have actual Christmas carols that are religious in a British Christmas special. I mean, we get Silent Night, we get
Bleak
Christ
Midwinter.
the Savior is Born, we get In the Bleak Midwinter, we get these things that are actually, that mention Christ in the lyrics on the air. Whereas in America, it's so, we can't even mention Jesus in a Christmas special on television because someone might be offended. We can only sing Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer and Frosty the Snowman.
Right. And Jingle Bells. In fact, we even get to the point where they don't even mention Christmas. It's just holiday.
Yeah. And you mentioned In the Bleak Midwinter, however, they did make a change to the song so it doesn't mention Jesus by name.
Oh, really?
Because I was listening to the lyric or watching the lyrics as I was listening to it the second time I watched episode, and verse 2 ends, a stable place suffice, the Lord God Almighty Jesus Christ. They removed that for the ending of verse 3, which is fall down before the ox and ass and camel which adore. They removed that section about Jesus altogether from that song. I mean, it's a beautiful, if you've seen the hymn, if you know the hymn, it's a beautiful carol. But they change it just enough so they don't actually say that, the Lord God Almighty Jesus Christ, in the episode.
Well, it's not that they're changing it. It's just they edit over it. It's not like they rewrite the lyrics to say something completely different. They do mention Jesus in hymns we hear elsewhere in the episode.
Yeah. No, they do.
So,
it's just, that particular one, I noticed that they just changed the hymn just enough. It's all part of the same hymn, but they change it just enough. I
wouldn't characterize it as changing the hymn. It's just the way they edit. They just don't include that verse for time reasons, because of where they need to get.
You're being a little more generous than I am, because the way it fit together is it was the same parts of the verses. They would line up if you saw them on music. Just this part was moved up. So, anyways, you're being a little more generous than I am on that one. But
incidentally, I, as an English country dance caller, I call an English country dance called In the Bleak Midwinter after that carol.
Interesting. I have to say that In the Bleak Midwinter is one of my favorite carols of all time. So I love hearing Catherine Jenkins sing this in this one. She's
it's beautiful.
Amazing voice. But we'll get to that. So we started with Kazran Sardik, the richest man in town. He's sort of like
Mr. Potter.
Mr. Potter, yes, in Potterville. He makes loans, and instead of taking goods as security, he takes people as collateral for the loan. And puts them in suspended animation, right?
Yeah,
which is also a bit of a reference to Dickens, which is when because at one point Scrooge says, "Oh, we put the excess population into poorhouses,
the surplus population."
Right, where Sardik puts the surplus population into suspended animation. So interesting connection. And apparently he's powerful enough to tell the president of this world what to do, and mean enough to not care about a ship of 4,000 people crashing and presumably dying in the crash. And then we have the doctor who has determined that these clouds that are they're crystal clouds or ice crystal clouds that the ship is flying through and can't lock on, it can't land, whatever. It's some sort of techno mumbo jumbo where it can't land through the clouds, because this device is creating a barrier of some sort, and that device is coming from Kazran Sardik's home, and it's a device that only he controls. So the doctor shows up and comes down the chimney like Santa.
Which is really nice, animated mantic.
Yes,
Matt Smith doing a Santa Claus.
Yes, it was very good. I've always wanted to do that, he says. And then he shows a picture.
I love how in this scene he's like talking to the little Tiny Tim equivalent,
right,
from the family, and is talking as if Santa Claus, or Jeff as I always call him, is real.
Yeah,
and he like turns to the kid and says, "Keep the faith, stay off the naughtiness."
That is a good line. And as we'll see with the 12th Doctor, this is Saint Nick Israel. So the Doctor also in this scene shows a picture of himself with Santa and Albert Einstein at Frank Sinatra's hunting lodge, which comes up later when the Doctor, Abigail, and Sardik are traveling in the past. They end up at Frank Sinatra's house. So I thought that was a nice little connection there.
But we have the line again of, that the person in the ice isn't. She's unimportant. Well, that's right. Yeah. 900 years of time and space. I haven't met anybody unimportant.
Exactly.
Yeah, this is one of my favorite lines in all of Doctor Who, where Sardik says, "Oh, that's nobody important," and Matt Smith says, "Nobody important? Blimey, that's amazing. Do you know, in 900 years of time and space, I've never met anyone who wasn't important before." And I just love that. That is so awesome.
Right.
One thing that is less awesome is the fact he's so impressed with these clouds made of ice. Ooh, I like that. And it's like, that's like cirrus clouds. We have those on Earth.
Yeah.
It's so high up in the air that the little particles of water freeze and become ice.
Yes. I mean, they could have made it. They're obviously not quite the same thing, but they don't make that explicit. So that's unfortunate. Yeah. So the family that's there is Abigail's family. We'll meet Abigail a bit. She's the girl frozen in the suspended animation, and they're trying to get her released for Christmas Day. We'll bring her right back, and Sardik is hearing none of it here. And at this moment, after he says that Abigail's not important at all, after that, it was when the Doctor says, "Whatever happens tonight, you bring on yourself," which is everything is going to be Christmas Carol references. But as he kicks out the family, the boy picks up some of the ashes or a little piece of coal that Matt Smith knocked out of the fireplace and throws it at Sardik and beans him off the head. And Sardik rushes over and he's about to, really smack the kid.
The kid.
Yeah, and he didn't, because he remembered his own father, who played also by Michael Gambon, who used to hit him. And that is the thing that makes the Doctor realize that Sardik is, as he says, halfway out of the dark. Christmas is very much you. Yeah.
Halfway out of the dark, which then he will turn that line on himself at the end.
Right.
So that was really cool. There's so much that I really like in this scene. on the emotional level, but the dialogue just sparkles in this scene. Some of it goes by incredibly fast, like when the doctor is looking at the machine that controls the cloud layer. It looks like a big organ, but tricked out with all this steampunk stuff, and he's like just running his fingers over it in delight and says, "Ooh, big flashy light things have me written all over them. Well, not actually, but give me time and a crayon."
Yeah, exactly.
and then when he's starting to talk to Sardik seriously, he says, "There are 4,003 people I won't allow to die tonight. Do you know where that puts you?" And he says, "Where?" 4,004. And then Sardik slaps him back and says, "Ooh, was that a sort of threaty thing?"
Yeah.
And that's where the doctor says, "Remember, you brought it on yourself. Whatever happens tonight."
The funny part is it almost was like an anti-threat, because the doctor says, these 4,003 people I'm not going to let them die. And by the way, you're number 4,004 that I'm not going to let die tonight.
Right. Exactly.
It goes both ways. So the implication is I would let you die.
Right.
Exactly.
And then once the family is kicked out, the doctor kind of stays behind, and Sardik says, "What do you want?" And the doctor says, "A simple life." But you didn't hit the boy. Like, it's sort of one of those little, not really what Sardik was asking. I just want a simple life.
It's also not really what the doctor wants, because he could have that.
Right. And then
we then get to see something as far as I can remember, we've only seen once before. Because the doctor realizes he's missing something and wants to know what it is. And he replays his memory, and we see things in his memory in this kind of rapid, jumpy editing sequence.
Right.
Which he didn't actually focus on the first time through. Yep. He did the same thing in the 11th hour, when he identified the human form of Prisoner Zero, and he just reran his memory and focused on different things in it. And he does that here too. It's actually kind of a lot like what Sherlock does in the Sherlock series. But we've seen the doctor do that before, but only once as far as I remember. And this is the only other time he does it.
That's something that Stephen Moffat obviously likes as an effect. And it is a practical effect for, trying to, replay your memory, so to speak.
Yes. And trying to remember the things that that you've seen. Yeah, that's a good metaphor for that. So
it also communicates the alienness of the doctor.
Right. So the doctor ends up outside after he talks to Amy, tells her, "I'm working on it." And they go outside, and he runs into Benjamin, which is the dad from that little family that the Sardik had thrown out. He's the not Tiny Tim's dad of this, Bob Cratchit of this story. Mm-hmm. And he's like, "I've never seen anybody stand up to Mr. Sardik like that." And then he go, "By the way, fog's thick tonight. There's a fish warning. Better get inside." The doc's like, "Fish? What do you mean fish warning?" Well, it turns out that there's the fish on this world can swim through the mist. Don't look too closely at the whole thing.
They're skyfish. Well, they do provide a sort of explanation where the doctor notices that the fog carries a slight electrical charge, and he wonders to himself if that's how the fish can fly.
Right. And so we see these little fish. And I like that.
Oh, by the way, spiders can fly in exactly that way.
Oh yes, the spider cell. Yeah.
And so, it is, although I don't think they knew that back when they made this special. But there are creatures that are capable of flying on electrical currents in the air.
Right. Flying spiders, folks. Just think of that for a little while.
I wonder if it includes the spiders the doctor was talking about in the cabinet.
The face spiders.
The face
spiders.
Or the giant spiders of the 13th Doctor's time. So in Sheffield.
Or the giant spiders of the 3rd Doctor's time.
Right. The planet of the spiders. So one of the things I like is that we have like this sort of shadow that goes behind the doctor that suggests the shark that we'll later encounter. I like that foreshadowing.
And you do hear the dun.
You do.
Yeah.
Just real quick, the little Jaws stinger.
And later when they are confronting the shark and they're down in the cryogenic chamber area with the fog, you see the fin of the shark swimming through the fog, just like the Jaws famous shot from Jaws.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, it's a great homage to Spielberg and John Williams. So the music is playing Hosanna in Excelsis over these speakers on the streets, which reminds the Doctor of Dickens' A Christmas Carol. And so the Doctor decides to change Sardic's memories in order to change Sardic's...
And his life.
Right, his life. To change Sardic's personality, to make him more amenable, more compassionate, sympathetic, so that he will then be easier to get him to save the people on the Starliner. So
he goes back in time, and he's and to show Sardik what's happening, he starts playing on the wall a video diary that he says he got off a drive that Kazran had made when he was a 12-year-old boy.
Right.
And on Christmas Eve, and his father comes in, and he really wants to see a fish, but his father's saying, no, you're far too young. You can't do that. I'm going to have Mrs. Mantovani come and babysit you. And he slaps Sardik. And so they cut around it because of British television standards. And this is a Christmas episode of a children's show. So you don't really want to see an actual father belting his son. But it's very clearly implied. And also Sardik Sr. is wearing a goatee. So that's how we know he's even more bad.
Yes. Yep. Goatees are evil.
Yeah. But then the Doctor shows up in the past, and he beams the TARDIS in right outside Sardik's window and comes in and says, I'm your new babysitter.
By the way, this is one of these episodes where the Doctor has absolute precise control of the TARDIS.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. Throughout this episode. Yes.
And really, that's characteristic of the Matt Smith era and the David Tennant era. It's the TARDIS in Classic Who tended to be unreliable most of the time. It gradually got better. His control of the TARDIS got really good in the New Who era until the 13th Doctor, when it's now reverted to the chaotic way it originally was.
Well, he control it with the caveat that the TARDIS often takes the Doctor where he needs to go, not where he wants to go.
Yeah.
I like how he recovered the footage using quantum enfolding and a paperclip.
Yeah, which is what you'd want for enfolding things.
Yeah, of course, a paperclip was essential, actually. So the Sardik remembers everything that's going on screen while the Doctor's standing there next to him talking about what he's watching. And then the Doctor, he yells at the Doctor finally, get out. And he says, okay, but I'll be back, way back. And that's when the Doctor shows up on the screen and he says, see, back.
Yeah,
which is great. He's talking to him from the past,
and we get nice meta moments where the Doctor starts talking to the camera, recording the video diary, and young Kazran says, "Who are you talking to?" And he's talking to older Kazran.
Yes,
but he says, "You."
Right. And he says, "Christmas past," and then now your past is going to change. It means your memories will too. And so Sardik says, it never happened. And then suddenly he realizes, dawns on his face, but it did. And so the Doctor tells young Sardik that he's going to be his babysitter tonight instead of Mrs. Mantovani.
And young Sardik is like challenging that as, you don't look like a babysitter. And he whips out, and I mentioned this in a recent episode, he whips out the psychic paper. This is one of my favorite psychic paper moments. And he says, I think you'll find that I'm universally regarded as a responsible adult. Yes. And young Sardik looks at it and says, it's just wavy lines. And then the doctor looks at it and says, yep, finally a lie too big.
Shorted it out.
Shorted it out, yes. Not a mature. Even the psychic paper kid couldn't deal with that.
Couldn't defend that.
So he says, you're 12 years old, so we'll stay away from under the bed. But the cupboard, I love a big cupboard. And then he says, do you know there's a thing called a face spider? It's just like a tiny baby's head with spider legs, and it specifically evolved to scuttle up the backs of bedroom cupboards, which I probably shouldn't have mentioned. I mean, it's just like, what is the worst thing you could tell a kid? Let's tell him that.
Oh, it gets worse. Later, then he says, "Oh, they're not in there. They're probably in your mattress."
Yeah, it's when young Kazran says, "Are there any face spiders in here?" He says, "Oh no, not this time of night. They'll all be asleep in your mattress."
Right. Yeah. So meanwhile, they decide that they're going to catch some fish, lure in some fish. So the doctor sets up this elaborate lure of the sonic screwdriver on a string while they're in the cupboard, and that's when he says about the spiders. And
by the way, notice it makes sense, even though the doctor, I guess, doesn't have a rational basis for this yet. It makes sense that you would use the sonic screwdriver as bait for these skyfish because they're attracted to the vibrations of singing and noise and things like that.
Right. I think maybe the doctor kind of figured that out when he saw the little fish around the speakers outside that were playing music. I'm going to guess that's where he got that from.
That could be.
I did like the line where it's like where the doctor tells Kazran they're going to go for the fish, and Kazran says, "Aren't you going to tell me it's dangerous?" And the doctor says, "Dangerous? Come on, we're boys. You know what boys say in the face of danger? What, mommy?"
Yeah.
That's such a great line.
Another really good line.
So, and then there's this discussion in the cupboard about the bow ties. What kind of tie is that? A cool one. Why is it cool? And then it's very funny because at the end of that discussion, Sardik realizes he's wearing a bow tie. So the old Sardik. Because the doctor wears one and it's cool. Like, yeah, I guess that's why I wear ties. Just like that, or bow ties. I mean, I like that moment.
And in the coming sequences, we see the montage of Christmas episodes or Christmas Eves. Young Sardik is dressed as the doctor in each case and is wearing a bow tie.
Yes. Yep. So we have the big shark come in. It's a very funny moment where they have this shark attack. The reveal of the shark.
There's always a bigger fish.
Yes, right, and the sky shark, and it's trying to get in at them. We have this, it's coming through the door of the cupboard, and half of the doctor's sonic has been swallowed by the shark, which is going to be an important plot point for the resolution of the episode.
So the two halves of the sonic are calling to each other to try to repair themselves.
Right. The sonic is very advanced and can heal itself even when split in half. And he's like, we have 4 chances to reach in and grab that sonic. And he says, why 4? 2 hands.
Yeah. He says, I've only got 2 goes and then it's your turn.
Yes, that's what it was.
Well, I like the line before that where he goes, "What do you call it when something that doesn't have feet is getting a running start?"
I didn't
Going
get
back for
that.
a running start.
Yeah. I didn't get that one. I do one of y'all understand that?
Well, the shark was backing off to get a good running start of it.
I thought there
but it
was
doesn't have any feet, so you can't hear it tap, 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 tap as it's backing off.
Yeah, I thought that might be wordplay based on some British idiom that I wasn't familiar with.
No, it's like a run-up is getting a running start. We would call it getting a running start. So
it is a British idiom, but for a phrase that we're familiar with as well.
Yeah. So what do you call it if you don't have any feet and you're taking a running start? And because you can't hear it running across the floor because it's flying through the air silently.
Okay.
So that's what
think like the Scooby-Doo mysteries where they're going to go through a door, so they get about halfway down the hallway and throw their shoulder into it, and of course, doesn't work. But
that's what the shark does. So they make their way down into the vault.
Well, to save the shark, because the shark has been injured now, and they want to get it back up into the sky. But the doctor says it wouldn't survive the trip. It needs a full life support system.
Right, and the doctor kind of challenges, well, why are you trying to save it? It was trying to eat you, and Kazran says, well, it's only hungry. Like he's showing compassion for something, despite the fact that it was following a natural urge to to eat him. And that is something the Doctor wants to build on. So he's found Kazran at a point in his life where if he builds on this, he can create a fully functioning, compassionate adult from this moment. And that's significant. So they go down to find a functioning life support system, which is, as Kazran says, like an icebox. So they go down into the vault, and that's where the surplus population is kept. And Sardik is
and Sardik knows that Abigail Pettigrew won't have a problem with this because she's got like a video testimonial message where she talks about fish, and he can tell how much she likes the fish. So she won't have a problem with them taking her out of the box for a little bit to use it to save one of the fish.
Right. Mm-hmm. Meanwhile, the shark has recovered and is now in the vault, swimming around, and they're running from it. And then they hear this beautiful singing, this amazing voice of Katherine Jenkins. Abigail sings in the bleak midwinter. She's a classical singer and recording artist. She was the biggest selling classical star in the UK in 2004. She's not an opera singer because she's never performed in an opera. So that was a distinction that her IMDb page made, and I thought I'd point it out. But
she's got a number of albums that have sold very well.
Yes. There's in the sitting room where old Sardik is still watching the recording. The portrait of his father suddenly is replaced with a portrait of Abigail, which indicates to us that Abigail has now played in his memory a vital role in his life, has changed his life for the better. And so as the memories and history of the older Sardik changes, which is a nice little moment. So they realize that Abigail is able to her singing soothes the beast. I forget what the old saying is.
Soothes the savage breast, but it gets misremembered as soothes the savage beast.
Yes, exactly. And the Doctor figures out. I'm going to skip a bunch. They end up in a sleigh pulled by, instead of pulled by reindeer, it's pulled by a shark. They're flying through the air with it.
And this is one of the things you just either have to accept in this episode or it's going to be a big problem for you.
Right.
It was just kind of a fun scene. I mean,
which is all it's meant to be. But let's back up a little bit because so they take the shark up to the sky and somehow they've gotten this huge, enormous shark into this tiny little human-sized icebox.
Yes.
Which makes no sense.
Yes.
But they let the shark go in the sky, so it goes swimming off among its own kind. It's still got half of a Sonic in it. That's going to be important. And the Doctor notices that on the front of the cryogenic chamber, it's got a display.
Yes.
A kind of rotary display that kind of counts down numbers, and it's got an 8 on it. It has the number 8 with a bunch of zeros in front of it. And the Doctor says, "What's this about?" And she evades the question and says, "Oh, this number has to do with me, not the shark." And she said, the Doctor introduces himself and she says, "You're a doctor. Are you one of mine?" And he says, "Why? Do you need a doctor?" And then he gets distracted and they don't follow up on it. But this is our first indication that something medically is seriously wrong with Abigail, and the number 8 is very important. And then when they return her, young Kazran promises out of the blue that the Doctor is going to come back every Christmas Eve. And Matt Smith is like, "Wait, no, I didn't say that." "Oh, he promises." and they shut the door, and we see the 8 count down to 7. And so, well, actually, we see them immediately open the door, and it's a year later, and they're wearing Santa hats, and they take Abigail out, and then to have another Christmas Eve, and that's when they close the door, and we see the 8 count down to 7.
Right. Yes. I maybe I skipped a little too much. So we have a couple of nice moments where they see the inside of the TARDIS, and they say it's bigger on the inside, and the Doctor says, "Yeah, it's the color. It really knocks the walls back." That was a good one. He says, "Shark in a box to go." When they go in the TARDIS, Abigail says, "This is amazing." And the Doctor says, "Nah, this is transport. I keep amazing out here," and opens the doors.
I think the TARDIS is going to have a little hiccup or something after an insult like that.
No kidding.
Then let's see. So it's the second Christmas Eve where they're cruising in the shark pulled carriage, and they end up at Abigail's sister's home in that present day, now much younger. There is a bit of a continuity problem, which is the boy, Tiny Tim, doesn't seem to age at all in between this time and the time when the Shardik is elderly and
I would assume
Abigail's
that's
sister.
a different character. I would assume that's a different character, but I could be mistaken.
Yeah, or maybe
That's how I would-
his son.
No, I think because what I thought was this was the one who was the boy that we see when Abigail is taken to their family's house is the adult man that was standing there asking for.
Right, it's
for
a
her
different
to come
character.
It's
out.
Benjamin. It's adult Benjamin.
Yeah.
Even though he looks
Right.
exactly like.
Well, you got
they have
people
this-
playing their own father in this episode.
Yeah. Okay, that's
So
a little
the
confusing.
kid that the Tiny Tim character is not the same kid that the doctor was doing the card tricks with.
Oh, it is different.
That's the father. That's the father that was standing there, is what I was reading online. It makes sense to me.
So Abigail's sister is the grandmother of the Tiny Tim from the first scene. Okay.
Yeah.
By the way, note the and we skipped a little bit here. That's kind of neat. Every time in this montage, which is a really fun, wonderful montage, every time they open the door to the ice cabinet, the doctor and Kazran are wearing a new item of Christmas clothing.
Yes.
So it looks the first time it's Santa hats.
Right.
And it keeps changing when at one point they open the door and they're wearing scarves.
Yes.
Yeah.
Really long scarves. And Kazran's in particular looks like the Fourth Doctor's scarf.
Yeah.
And it makes sense. It's obviously an allusion to the Fourth Doctor, but it also makes sense because scarves are a kind of clothing you wear at Christmas time in the Northern Hemisphere.
Well,
and
speaking of the
then
counter.
When I was going to say, when they close the door, the counter says 4.
Yes. Very nice. Very nice. So they go to Egypt, they go to Paris. I mean, they go to all these amazing places on Earth, apparently.
And older Kazran is now in his life looking back at photos that previously didn't exist that he took on these trips.
Yes, exactly. And now the younger Kazran has aged to be about the same age as Abigail.
In 1 year, apparently.
I mean
it's like 4 years, but we've been seeing the young the 12-year-old Kazran actor.
Yeah, there's like
and
three. Yeah.
1 year later, you grew up.
Yeah. Well, but that's kind of like you're so used to seeing someone and all of a sudden one day you realize, kind of like I suppose like when you lost weight, Jimmy, there are probably people who said, you saw you every day. It's like, oh, I can tell now that you've lost 30, 40, 50 pounds,
Yeah.
Right.
I saw people I hadn't seen in a year and it's like, what happened to you? Are you medically okay? Yes, this is deliberate.
This is good. So maybe that's what happened is, she was so used to seeing him at a certain age. I was like, oh, now you're different. They just had two actors to play the same character.
Well, she can't really be finding 12-year-old Kazran hunky, so they needed to bring in a new actor.
Yes, that would have been awkward. So we have...
that would have been so Phantom Menace.
Now, the thing I'm surprised they don't mention is to her, basically, each Christmas Eve was like, she went in, she fell asleep, she woke up next Christmas Eve. She went in, she fell asleep, she woke up.
It's always Christmas.
Time passing for her.
Right.
They
So this is like
that at all.
a week of Christmas Eve for her.
Yeah.
Right. And they I kind of skipped. Yeah, you're right. I did skip ahead too much. So they go to her family's home, and this is where her sister and her brother-in-law and their son, who later is the grown man, they are preparing for Christmas, and they go in and they determine we're going to have Christmas dinner tonight. And so there's these fun moments where the doctor's trying to do a card trick, and it's always the wrong card. It's never the right card. Even when
he tells the kid you're doing it wrong.
right. And even when he pulls the card out of the sealed Christmas cracker, it's still the wrong card inside the Christmas cracker. And then see.
Also in this scene, the sister is telling Abigail, "What are you doing with this teenage
the son of Sarek?" Yeah,
right. He's going to treat his father treats people like cattle, and he will too in the future. You just wait.
Right.
And Abigail is like, "Oh no, he's different." And you can see that at the moment he is different because he's like standing there holding Christmas lights, helping Abigail's brother-in-law dress the fireplace. And so he's taken this subordinate role. He's being helpful. He's not like his father at this point.
Right. And so after the dinner, they go back to the vault to seal her back in again. And there's this funny moment where Kazran he kind of pulls the doctor aside and says, "I think she's going to kiss me. I've never kissed anyone
right.
before. What do I do?" And the doctor's like, "Well, try and be all nervous and rubbish and a bit shaky. Why? Because you're going to be like that anyway. Might as well make it part of the plan."
Yeah, that's great. And then when he comes back, one of my all-time favorite lines, because Kazran still needs more bucking up to kiss Abigail. He comes back and the doctor says, "It's either this or go to your room and try to design a new kind of screwdriver. Don't make my mistakes."
Yes.
Apparently the doctor was rubbish with girls. So, and then we get some more. It's Elder Sarek looking at pictures of at the Statue of Liberty, at Uluru, at Sydney Opera House, Empire State Building, Eiffel Tower, so on and so forth. And then one that says California 1952 on the back, and they're in front of the Hollywood sign. And then we're this is the one at Frank Sinatra's house by the swimming pool. And we have this funny moment of the doctor's running from Marilyn Monroe, who wants to take him off to get married, while Abigail and Kazran are kissing. And he says, "Right, fine, thank you. I'll just go get married then. See how you like that. Marilyn, get your coat." He goes off with Marilyn Monroe and evidently gets married.
I love how at the end of the episode, when they call back on that and Marilyn has phoned him on the TARDIS, it's like, that was never a proper chapel. As if that was going to invalidate the marriage.
Exactly.
So I like that I accidentally got engaged to Marilyn Monroe. So then back at the cryo vault,
but the reason the doctor is doing all that with Marilyn Monroe is because Abigail and Kazran are having a very important conversation where Abigail is very sad and she tells Kazran something, and we and the doctor don't know what it is.
That doesn't happen until they're back in the cryo vault.
Well, no, they have the conversation by the pool.
They have it by the pool,
but the doctor doesn't know.
And then they kiss because Kazran is consoling her, and the doctor's walking around being silly at that point. And then when they go back to the cryo vault,
right?
Oh, okay.
The Kazran is saying it says good night to Abigail, and then he tells the doctor he doesn't want to do this anymore, that it's gotten old. Yep. And if you notice, he takes off the bow tie at this moment. So he's distancing himself from the doctor at this point. And we can deduce that what Abigail, because we have the early "do you need a doctor" thing, and we've been seeing the countdown, and now they've had this climactic conversation. She's got 1 day left. And we know that Abigail has told Kazran she's going to die in a day. And that's why he really wants to stop this now, because he doesn't want to face this in a year. And it's her death that undoes the knowledge of her death after she's become so important to Kazran, that undoes everything the doctor has done with him to this point. And that's why the picture on the fireplace changes back to his father, because now he's the bitter Kazran again. Life is not fair. I fell in love with this woman, and now she's going to die, and I can't stop it.
Right. Yep.
And he becomes very bitter towards the doctor for having done all this, because now not only has the doctor messed with his life, but as he says later on, as someone I knew once took a very long time to teach me, life is not fair. So that's the lesson he took away from all of this after he learned about Abigail's impending death.
Right. And that's when Amy shows up in his drawing room there as a hologram, and she says, "I'm the ghost of Christmas present." And then a ghost dressed like that, she's still in the kissogram outfit. And Rory comes in, "Hey, eyes off the skirt, man." He says
And Kazran says, "You turned into a Roman." She says, "Yeah, I do that."
So what they do is they have the holograms of the people on board the ship singing Silent Night. And the explanation is they're trying to, do what Abigail did, which is to align the ice crystals through the sonic vibrations, et cetera, et cetera. We learn later it's not working, but why tell the people any different? Give them some hope. So this also does not work. The Ghost of Christmas Present doesn't change anything.
By the way, there's in conjunction with the Ghost of Christmas Present scene, there's a scene where we see what happened a year later on Christmas Eve when the doctor would have shown up for Abigail's final day. He's given Kazran part of the sonic and says, just activate it and I'll hear if you ever need me. And he says, oh, I don't think I'll need you. But he takes the sonic and puts it in a drawer. And then on the next Christmas Eve, his father has perfected his machine and gives it to Kazran and says, I've given you the sky and everything beneath it. And Kazran is so disgusted that he almost calls the doctor. He goes to the drawer where the sonic is. He picks up the sonic. He takes it out of the drawer. He's about to use it. And then he sees the doctor standing there outside his window, just egging him on to use it. And he doesn't. He can't reject his father with the doctor standing there like, I told you so.
Right.
And he puts the sonic back in the drawer. And then we cut to the future on the same drawer, which is a really nice time jump of like 30 years or something.
Right.
And that's how we get into the Christmas present scene.
Right. Okay. And then so that doesn't work. And then so the doctor confronts Sardek again. After
and
that doesn't.
So does Amy. Amy says, why don't you just let her out? Why don't you just let Abigail out? And he says, how do I choose which day?
Yes.
Is going to be her last. And that's something that is very human. I mean, if my wife could live only one day and I had to choose which day it is,
right,
I would dither too. Right. Because as long as she hasn't lived that last day, she's still alive in some sense.
She's Schrodinger's Abigail.
Yeah, exactly. And so she's still in the box.
Yeah, exactly.
So I thought that was a very human moment. And then when he's on the spaceship, when they widen the hologram beam, so he now is appearing on the spaceship that's crashing. He's like, everybody's got to die. Tonight's as good as any other night. How do you choose?
Right.
And so he's really become mentally wrapped up in this inability to choose moments of death and life.
And that's where he says to the doctor, all my life I've been called heartless. My other life, my real life, the one you rewrote. So he's a bit bitter at that. Now look at me. And what she's saying is, I was heartless. Now I'm so brokenhearted that I can't make a choice. So I'm just as in the same situation. And the doctor says, better a broken heart than no heart at all, which is somewhat of a trite saying, which I like Sardek's response.
Oh, it's awesome. He just says, try it. You try it.
Yeah.
And for someone who is brokenhearted, and I mean, that totally rings true.
Yes.
Don't give me your trite cliches about better a broken heart. It hurts like hell.
Frankly, the doctor should know better.
Yeah. And that's one thing I'm kind of glad that Stephen Moffat didn't do, is have the doctor have some kind of, response of, well, I watched my whole planet die. Is that enough for you? Something like that.
Right.
Yeah.
No, it gives Sardek.
He just left it.
He gives Sardek the upper hand in that one, which is good. He doesn't take the easy way out.
And then we get the awesome twist.
Yeah, and he also says he's not afraid of the future, of dying alone and cold and afraid. Are you going to show me the future? This is part of that twist, the Christmas future.
Yes.
I'm not afraid of the future. I know I'm going to die alone or cold and afraid. And that's when young Karzan comes out and says, no, you are the ghost of Christmas future. And he pulls out young Karzan, who sees old Karzan. He sees his father in old Karzan. You know what I mean? He thinks it's his dad.
Yeah. The way they do the reveal is, the doctor has indicated he's the ghost of Christmas future now. He's going to show you the future. And Kazran dares him to do it and says, well, show me the future. And the doctor says, I am showing you. I'm showing you right now. And then we realize he's showing young Kazran the future of who he's going to become. Right. And young Kazran steps out of the fog and is aghast at his future self. And his future self.
Well, he doesn't realize at first that it is. He
thinks it's his dad. Yeah. Right. He thinks it's his dad. And older Kazran becomes so enraged he almost slaps young Kazran again.
He almost becomes his own father.
He does. And but he remembers when his father slapped him, and he stops himself and breaks down in tears and hugs young Kazran. And it's this awesome emotional moment. And we have, for once, no Blinovich limitation effects causing sparks.
Exactly.
When you cross your own timeline physically.
And so we have, they decide, this is the time to save, to the day that Abigail has to live the moment. And he needs Abigail to sing to save the ship.
And the reason they have to do that is because they try to use the Sky Machine to fix things, and they can't. Right. Because Kazran has now changed too much, and the isomorphic biometric controls on it won't recognize him anymore because his thought patterns are so different. And so that's why they then have to go and get Abigail so she can sing the problem in the sky away. They're going to hook her up to a big loudspeaker with the sonic screwdriver and let her voice do the magic.
Right. Yeah, it has something to do with the half of the sonic is still in the sky and the shark, and the other half is with them. I like when Abigail says to Sardik, look at you, you're so old now. I think you've waited a bit too long, and you're hoarding my days like an old miser.
Which he was.
Yes.
Yep.
Beautiful.
And she then has this great line, this awesome, hopeful, but tragic line. We've had so many Christmas Eves, Kazran. I think it's time for Christmas Day.
Right. Yes. Mm-hmm. Beautiful. And then she sings this song, which I mentioned at the top, when you're alone, silence is all you see. That's one of the lyrics. And you mentioned silence several times throughout it. It's very interesting because in the next season...
Clear foreshadowing.
Yes, the silence is going to be the big bad guy in the next season.
Unfortunately, they never really pay that off. Yeah. The whole silence will fall thing, they rush it too quick at the end.
Yeah. Yep. It was interesting, though, going back and watching it, that song, they call it Abigail's song. That's the title that it's used. You don't see it anywhere in the show, but if you get the soundtrack, that's what it's called. And you hear it just like the Doctor's theme. I am the Doctor that Murray Gold is so famous for. Yeah. Every time Abigail was on screen, that song is there. Right. That's her theme throughout the entire episode. Yeah. So it was, of course, Murray Gold is famous for being able to do that, for bringing in these leitmotifs and, throughout the entire episode. Right. So that song comes up repeatedly. You hear it kind of in the background.
And we have, of course, the obligatory when it's a Christmas episode, it has to snow, and so the singing resonates in the clouds and causes them to snow. Yep. And then the Doctor is building snowmen everywhere. He can't help himself.
20 of them,
which foreshadows another future Christmas episode of the Killer
which
Snowmen.
Is nowhere near as good.
I love Amy's line though on the snowmen of you might mistake that for a real person. And I'm not my mistake for that for a real person and the snowman too.
Yeah.
And let's see, I'm trying to think.
So Amy and Rory get down safe and everything. Right. They're going to go off on the next leg of their honeymoon. And the Doctor has returned young Kazran to his own time. And older Kazran and Abigail are drawing down the shark, and they also have the Doctor has left them the buggy that they had previously attached it to, and he tells Amy and Rory that he thinks that older Kazran is going to be going on a ride with Abigail, and we have this moment of hope and foreshadowing where the Doctor is about to get on the TARDIS and he's reflecting on where he is in his own journey. And he says halfway out of the dark,
Right.
which ties into the overall story arc that we have with the Doctor since the Time War. He's been in a very dark place, and now he's halfway out of that.
Yeah.
And it ties into the themes of hope and sorrow in this episode. And then he gets in the TARDIS and goes off. And the last shot we have is of Kazran and Abigail flying through the sky joyously in the shark buggy on Christmas Day, it being their last Christmas Day. It's a moment of joy and sorrow, and it is so beautiful. If you tear up a little bit, that is totally justified. And
it's the dust in here, it's just kind of dry and dusty,
I got some snow in my face.
Yeah. It's also earlier Stephen Moffat, so even though we don't see the death, we know it happens.
Right.
He doesn't pull it back.
There's a great little line there where Amy says, of course, it'll be their last day together, won't it? And the Doctor says, everything has got to end sometime. Otherwise, nothing would ever get started.
Well, that's actually not true. But
right. But certainly everything has got to end sometime. And that's, and so you have to start in order to get, to get to the end of something, in order to have an ending, you have to start something. And I think that's kind of what Moffat was trying to say there. It's that you have to be willing to go to the end of something by starting in the first place. And then we get Rory saying, "Oh, by the way, someone called Marilyn is ringing the phone. It sounds like the Marilyn."
Yeah.
And so that was good. All right, so that brings us to the end of this episode of Doctor Who.
Final comment from me. One of the things I've often said is, so Doctor Who has really largely almost always been science fantasy rather than science fiction. And in the Stephen Moffat era, it became not just science fantasy, but science fairy tale.
Right.
And sometimes the science fairy tale didn't work effectively. Like I thought the Wedding of River Song was science fairy tale, with all those history mashups happening all at once. It just made no sense. But this episode, Christmas Carol, is science fairy tale done right. This is really good. I love this episode.
Yep.
Oh,
Any last thoughts, Father Corey?
The only one I have is when Sartre was Kazran was rejecting the Doctor, didn't want to give up that last day with Abigail. He says Christmas is for kids, right? And that's such an interesting view of, again, this is the secular view of Christmas. What we understand Christmas being about is not just for kids, but it's the secular trappings that have attached themselves. But it really does view Christmas as just another fairy tale. It's the winter solstice. And so we celebrate because the days are getting longer and eventually it's going to get warmer. And, it's a fairy tale. But that's not the Christian view. The Christian view is Christmas is for all of us because, of course, it's celebrating the birth of our Savior.
Right. And that's a good note to end on because, as we said, this is Christmas Eve, and we can reflect on the great birth of our Savior and the great gift that He is. And
Amen.
So it's a wonderful. It's nice to have fun with these Christmas stories. But it's always good to remember, to go back to what it's really about. Maybe someday we'll get a Christmas special where he goes back to Bethlehem, and that could be very interesting indeed.
Yeah.
Maybe the Doctor interacts
not.
Well, it would be fun if he was sort of around the nativity itself, like interacting with shepherds or something.
Sure. It's totally possible to write a good Doctor Who story set in Bethlehem.
Whether
I
they
just
would
don't
or
think
not.
the current team is capable of writing it.
Right.
Yes, exactly.
I'll hold out hope for that. Maybe there'll be a little fanfic on that. So what do you think, listeners, of this 11th Doctor Christmas special, the Christmas Carol, or what we had to say about it? Is it one of your favorites? So let us know by going to sqpn.com/Doctor Who or to the Secrets of Doctor Who Facebook page. Find the link to this episode there and leave us a comment. Or you can send us some feedback via email to doctorwho@sqpn.com. Please remember to like Secrets of Doctor Who on Facebook, retweet us on Twitter, leave us comments, subscribe in iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, TuneIn, your favorite podcast app, or on YouTube, where you should hit the bell to get notifications when we post a new episode. And above all, share the podcast with your friends to help us grow the community and reach more listeners. It's Christmas, and so give your friends a gift of a fun new podcast. So we'll be back next time when we'll be discussing the 13th Doctor's New Year's Day special. That's coming up next week. And until then, Father Corey Stika, thank you for joining me and sharing the secrets of Doctor Who.
Thank you, Dom, and Merry Christmas to you.
Merry Christmas. Jimmy Aiken, thank you as well.
Thank you so much, Dom. Merry Christmas, everyone, and God bless us, everyone.
And once again, I'm Dom Bettinelli. Thank you for listening to The Secrets of Doctor Who on StarQuest.
Right. This is going to be fun.
This is Dom Bettinelli again. We hope you've enjoyed this podcast and that you'll help us keep producing the podcast you love. Thank you for your generosity. To make your pledge and find out about the free thank you gifts we'd like to send you, visit sqpn.com/give. That's sqpn.com/give.